my name is Greta, and welcome to my podcast. This podcast is going to be about spirituality, growth, self love, confidence, acceptance, soul's journey, and so many more things. But first, in this first episode of my podcast, I want to talk about my own life story. I think it's very important for people to understand who they follow, who they listen to, and who they take their advices from. I was born and raised in Latvia by very young parents. I was a single child, and as a typical Eastern European family, there was not a lot of stability, emotional, home, etc. I grew up with a very chaotic household. As I said, my parents were very young. They wanted to go out, they wanted to do their things, and I was a lot of the times going to other households, to my relatives. And that taught me from very, very young age how to adapt, how to be independent, which serves me greatly now. And I also want to preface this by saying that my immediate households were toxic and very, very chaotic. But there was a lot of love. My parents loved me and still love me. I think that is the most important things that they have given me, and that's love. In no shape or form I judge nor shame my parents. I know that they did the best they could with what they had, and I think they raised a good kid. So we weren't a family who had money or anything like that. I went to public school. I always say it was ghetto school. And I was the kind of person, the kind of a kid that didn't care about grades, attending school, all of these things. I cared about having fun. I also started music school, and I was skipping a lot of music school just to go out and have fun. My priority was always connection, friends, and freedom in what I wanted to do. And I think that reflects greatly on who I am right now and who I've always been. It's in my core. Freedom, excitement, and connection is in my core. As middle school approached, as most European countries, we got introduced to a lot of substances and things at a very young age. And we acted like adults at a very young age. And I think that also helped me to go out and be crazy and do my crazy things that now I'm very calm. I don't party a lot. I don't really drink alcohol. I think I've had my share time of having fun in that kind of way. And I was a bit of trouble kid. As I said, there was a lot of chaos at my home, so that also reflected on some of my behaviors. As time went by, I grew more and more. I finished middle school and I started going to high school. And in high school, that was a different public school, and it was a cool kid school because it was like in the center and everything. And that was something new to me because I was used to the ghetto. But nonetheless, I was there and I made friends. And after some time, these friends started bullying me, and teachers started bullying me. So it wasn't really a great environment to be in. At first, it was behind my back. I didn't know that these things were happening. Rumors were spreading about me that weren't true. Chats were made mentioning my name, etc., etc. And maybe I will make another video that maybe I will tell more about this story, because bullying is very interesting, how it impacts your brain and what happens in the brain of those people who are bullying. And that also taught me a lot at a very young age about human behavior, social behaviors, why people like the way they do, why people want to put down other people. Dealt with rejection, with betrayal at a young age. But then I started TikTok, and immediately my TikTok went viral. Suddenly, people from my school stopped bullying me, wanted to be friends with me because I was cool again. I was popular and they wanted to be popular too. I decided to quit public school and go to online school, not because of the bullying, because of the environment of the school, because teachers got pretty comfortable talking BS about me behind my back. As I mentioned before, one of my core values is freedom, and I wanted to have freedom. So I went to online school. I had my first serious relationship at the time. I experienced a lot of firsts at that time. After some while, I was 17 and I realized that I was gay. I didn't really know what it meant to me at that moment or what it even was, but it was the most limitless, the most freeing feeling that I have ever felt in my life up until that point. Me and my first partner, we broke up, and I started to go absolutely bad shit crazy. I was 17. I was in my peak teenage years. I was wildin'. I was here and there and everywhere with this, with that person, and I was every single where. I was testing things out. Okay. I always look back at my when I was 17, that it was such a limitless experience for the first time in my life. I did what I wanted to do. I wasn't limited on anything. And with that, I met my partner at the time, who I was with for 3.5 years. And as I mentioned before, I grew up in a very chaotic household, a very toxic household. So with that comes a lot of baggage. And when you're young, that young, and you're in a very, very serious relationship, I was 18 at that moment, I didn't know how to deal with certain traumas coming up, with certain patterns coming up. There's a lot of behaviors that I'm not proud of. There's a lot of communication issues that I had. I didn't know how to self-regulate, how to emotionally regulate, how to have clear boundaries. I had no idea what boundaries were even. None of these things were taught to me. And suddenly I had this spiritual awakening that so many things that I've been taught are complete BS. And so many things I haven't been taught. And when I found spirituality, at first it was meditation, it was yoga, crystals, tarot, etc., etc. That was spirituality for me. And now I call it more of a spiritual ego. I think most of us, if not all, go through a spiritual ego, at least at first, because it's all very exciting, it's all very new. And what I really liked about that is that it answered more and more of the questions that I had that I didn't have answers for. Because what I didn't mention is that when I was in middle school, I was a Christian. Not because my family was Christian, they weren't Christian. At a very young age, I had questions and I wanted answers. I wanted to understand what what is this world? What am I even doing here? I went to Christian camps and I loved them. I loved the knowledge that it gave me. I loved the connections and the time that I had there. It was truly the highlight of my year, every single year. And I went to these Christian camps for like 5 years. When I had like my spiritual awakening, those Christian beliefs fell. And I will definitely make another episode about religion because it's a very, very deep, complicated topic that I've also have gotten through and learned ins and outs of it. And it's a very, very interesting topic. I've been introduced with multiple religions in my life, not only Christianity, but at that time, Christianity was what was available for me. I didn't really know about any other religions at the time. But as I got more and more spiritual and I learned more and more about spirituality, the more of my religiousness went down and my spirituality went up. Because there is a difference between being spiritual and being religious. And a lot of the things started not making sense to me. That I had questions for, nobody had answers for. But I did find those answers in spirituality. And that's why it was so exciting. That's why it was like, oh my God, I have found this thing. But again, I was in my spiritual ego at that moment, and I was also 18, so young. And as I already started to talk about my relationship that I was at that moment, it was very toxic, very on and off relationship. Both of us contributed to a lot of hurt and pain to each other and to ourselves. And that came with its own trail of lessons. I'm also going to do another video specifically about toxic relationships and the truth about toxic relationships. Because it's not all bad. One of my favorite quotes is, good thing, bad thing, who knows? It's tattooed right here on my arm. Because at the time when I was going through it, it was bad. It was bad. I was hurting a lot. When you're in a toxic relationship, when you're constantly on and off, when you're constantly in this chaos. But that is all I knew at the time. Chaos is all I knew because that's what I grew up with. Chaos. So my nervous system, my brain was wired for chaos. I felt comfortable in chaos. Everything that brought peace, when it was peaceful in my life or in my relationship, I found how to create chaos. It was hard. It was hard being that young and being in that kind of relationship, but maybe some of you can relate. After these 3.5 years, it was time to call it quits. My partner at the time broke up with me, and it was very, very hard for me because I was immensely attached to this person, okay? In ways that I lost a sense of self because I was constantly chasing. Or when I was running away, that person was chasing. So it was constantly like this. It was never a stream of flow, as relationships should be. And even though I never meant to hurt anybody, and I've never been the kind of person to intentionally go out of my way to hurt someone, I always did the things that I thought was best for me. Now, good thing, bad thing, who knows? Because at the time I thought, yes, this is a good thing for me. Later on, it was a very bad thing for me. So you never really know. You never know if a situation can turn ugly. You never know if a situation can turn into a blessing. And that's what you need to keep in mind. Because that over and over and over again, universe has proved me that you cannot put a label on any situation because you don't know. You don't know how it's going to turn out. Okay? When we broke up, my nervous system was very shattered and very, very fragile. I was very vulnerable. And for my nervous system to heal, I needed a long time because it was a long relationship. And it wasn't even from the relationship, it was from my whole life up until that point that I've experienced. I realized that I do not want to repeat these patterns anymore. Not behavioral patterns, not thought patterns, not emotional patterns, not people patterns, not situation patterns. I did not want to do all of that. I was like, if this is how my life is going to be if I don't learn, then I will do anything in my power to heal. I will do anything in my power to reprogram my mind. Because in no way I'm settling with this chaos, with this toxicity for the rest of my life. And that is one of the greatest things that whole situation brought me. The fuel to reprogram my mind. Okay? But at first, it was very, very difficult. I was going through a very painful heartbreak. As I said, it was very on and off. It was very chasing and running. So, for a long time, I couldn't even accept the fact that this has happened. So, it was taking me a bit of a longer time to heal, to really feel my emotions, to grieve. And at that time, I had this one friend, or that's what I thought, who I met not really long ago. I met her less than a year ago then, from the moment that I had this breakup and everything. So a bit more than half a year. I was friends with this girl, and we became very, very close friends. We hung out almost every day. We had very similar interests. When I was younger, I had only female friends. Then when I got into my 17, 18, and 19, 20, I only had male friends. And I really wanted a female friend because, well, quite frankly, females do understand females better. As I mentioned, we shared a lot of interests with this girl. And she was smart, at least I thought so at the time. And I felt like I could trust her with the information, with my feelings, because at the time, I just needed a friend. It was very, very, very hard to deal with it on my own. Because basically, what was happening, I was facing my shadow. I was facing my demons. Okay? I was facing my ego. I was facing all of the situations that have happened in my life. And I had to. And I was standing right in front of it. And let me tell you, that is one of the hardest things that I've ever done in my life, is facing my demons and facing my shadow. It's so hard that most people in this lifetime don't do that. They don't face their demons nor face their shadow, because you have to look right in the face in your demons, and you have to accept it. You have to love it. You have to forgive yourself, you have to accept yourself, and you have to let go of these identities, of these made up illusions in your head, of these programs that have been put in your head when you were a baby, when you were just born. It's all programming. So I understood that there's so many things that I need to unlearn. I need to unlearn these identities, and I need to accept my shadow and love it like my friend, because my whole life I was running away from my shadow. I couldn't accept it. And most people can't. They can't accept their shadow, and they will run and run and run and run, and they will go through the same patterns, same people, same situations over and over again, and cry, why is this happening to me? Wah, la, 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 la. When their shadow and their demons are controlling their life, because they can't just take the time, sit down, breathe, and face it, and forgive yourself, and take accountability for your own actions and words and reactions. You have to be very strong to do that. And if you have tried to do that, or if you have done that, or if you even want to do that, then you already are going somewhere, and you can achieve peace and fulfillment and happiness. Because your shadow is not going to go anywhere. Your shadow is always going to be there with you, okay? You need to befriend it, you need to accept it, and you need to love it as much as you love your spirit. As you can imagine, I was going through it, okay? I also, over the years, I developed a dependency on weed. Sorry if my relatives are listening, it's just a fact, it's what I've been through. Which at first was fun, was a way how to socially be included, but with time it started being like self-medication, and with time it also started being as a distraction. And only recently I've quit weed so I can get rid of the dependency. It was no longer serving me. And as I've been through so much, I knew I could do it. We will get to it. Anyways, so I'm like using all of these things. I'm constantly also distracting myself because it is very hard to sit with yourself. It is very hard to face your shadow. It is very hard to face your demons and accept yourself and forgive yourself. It is very hard. So I was doing everything, not trying not to do that, but it was screaming at me constantly that I have to do it. But I just couldn't. I couldn't. I was very, very, very fragile at that time. So I had this friend, and some issues started rising up with this friend while I'm going through this. It's literally been like a month or two, something, 2 months, 3 months since the breakup. Suddenly, like, this girl starts getting very weird, okay? Starts ignoring me, then sends me a paragraph about some things that she made up her mind, like things that didn't even happen. It was very hard for me because I didn't want to disappoint my best friend. And I've always been very, very loyal to my friends. I've been very loving and caring to my friends. I didn't want to put my baggage on my friends. I just wanted to share. I just wanted to have a friend at the time because it was a lot to carry. And then we kind of talked it out, and everything was fine for a bit. And I started kind of walking a bit on eggshells with this girl. But still, I thought she was my best friend, so I still trusted her. I constantly was asking her, like, am I too much? Am I this and that? Which I received an answer, no. You can always come to me, talk to me, and all of that. Great. I appreciate you because I desperately need it. And one day, she started getting weird again, ignoring me again, just giving red flag after red flag. And mind you, I'm going all of this transformation, all of this facing the darkness within me, which is not a bad thing. We all have darkness inside of us. And going through these emotions of this heartbreak, my nervous system is adapting, my nervous system is healing. So it was just a lot. And then one day she sends me a very long voice note where she was basically projecting her insecurities onto me and manipulating me in a way that is who I am, because I know you, because I've been your friend for a year. I know you, that's who you are, and you need to take this garbage. And I was very, very vulnerable at the time, and I thought she wanted to help me. I really did think she wanted to help me. Now looking back, she did not want to help me, but she did help me, because all of these reasons that I told you before is why I'm here, why I'm even talking with you guys, okay? After that voice note, something completely shattered within me, and I experienced an ego death. And that night, I almost took my own life. I was bawling my eyes out to the point where I had nothing more to cry when I couldn't breathe. I couldn't do anything. I was on my knees praying. They made it seem like I needed urgent therapy. And of course, yes, I absolutely did need therapy at the time. But that's not how you go about saying to someone who's in such a fragile state and is so vulnerable, if you are a real friend to someone, you will be loving, you will be considerate to them, okay? So I started experiencing an ego death. And I remember that night, I had a choice. Either I take full control over my life, over my healing, or I go on and unalive myself. So after a lot of tears and prayer, found a psychotherapist online, and I wrote a message that got me in that cabinet in 2 days. So you maybe can put in perspective in what kind of desperate moment I was, that a therapist that you usually wait for a month, I got in 2 days. Okay. Also that night, I had a visualization where my reality in that moment was crashing down. And as I'm doing this visualization, it's like a guided visualization where it kind of shows what is your reality right now and transforming your reality, okay? So I see these two huge metal skyscrapers without any windows, without any doors, anything. And I see them and I look at them and they start crashing down, smoke everywhere. And I knew that this current reality is ending. This period of my life is ending and something new is starting. And I really, really had the hope, even though at that night, in that moment, I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I really didn't think I was going to make it out. And I thought I was crazy. I thought I was a bad person, a bad friend, and etc., etc. Projections from other people that weren't even mine, that weren't what I was thinking about myself ever, that nobody in my life ever thought about me. I was so vulnerable that I did take it. Now reflecting that I was taken advantage of in that moment. And in the next day, I remember I was going to work and a car almost hit me. Literally, like a millisecond later, it would have hit me and dragged me onto the big road and I would have be gone. Literally the next day. And I knew that universe was telling me, do you really want this? Do you really want this? Do you really want to unalive yourself, you know? Universe is very cheeky. At that time, I was working as a social media manager. I had my job, I had my apartment, but everything else in my life fell completely apart. And I felt like I lost myself completely, but at the same time, as I said, I was experiencing ego death. And you know, a lot of people see ego death as something bad. You don't ever want to experience that. But actually, ego death was one of the best things that could happen to me in that moment. Because I had an opportunity to start from a completely clean slate. Because every single thing that I thought about myself was just wiped out. Every single good thing, bad thing, all of these things wiped out. And I knew that I've been giving this massive boost in unlearning of who I thought I was. And I started psychotherapy. I started meditating a lot. I started journaling a lot. I started doing a lot of shadow work. I was sitting with myself. I was sitting with my emotions, with my thoughts. Quickly, my life started shifting quickly. My nervous system started healing. I started feeling more at peace with myself, with my thoughts, with my emotions. I started seeing light at the end of the tunnel again, okay? The most important thing is that I learned who I am at my core. Not my ego, not these programmings, not these identities, who I am at my core. And when I realized that, I knew I had a solid foundation and I was just building on that foundation. And that's why I'm saying why ego death is not necessarily a bad thing, because you unlearn, you get taken away from all of these identities that you really try to keep on to. But now you have the opportunity to build yourself up from scratch again. I went through a real, authentic, raw spiritual awakening where my spiritual ego dropped. And I realized that I don't have to do anything to be spiritual. I am spiritual in my essence, in my core. You are spiritual in your essence, in your core, because your spirit will never leave. Your spirit will always and forever, until the end of the universe, will be there. Okay? And there's nothing you can do or say or be or earn or whatever that will make you more spiritual. You already are spiritual. The more I got into these mindsets, I started noticing still a lot of mindset patterns that I had, a lot of thought patterns that I had that was constantly manifesting into my emotions and therefore manifesting into my reality. Okay. One by one, I started to reprogram my mind with my therapist and with myself. And by learning myself and by getting to know myself and by accepting myself and by thinking, but there can be another way. I don't want to live in a lack or scarcity mindset anymore. And I started switching to abundance mindset, okay? And it was beautiful. And that was the moment where I started sowing the seeds of a new reality, of my highest path, my highest self, who I really am without everything that has happened in my life. One by one, I started getting rid of my blocks. I started healing my inner child. I learned how to emotionally regulate. I learned how to healthily react to things, how to communicate healthily. What are boundaries, even? And I was learning all of this in a rapid speed. Remember when I was telling you that I was facing my shadow? Finally, I have accepted my shadow, started loving my shadow just as much as I love my spirit. I forgave myself for the mistakes I've given. I've taken accountability for the mistakes I've given, okay? That doesn't mean that I identify with that persona who made those mistakes, because I don't anymore. I see myself from 5 years ago and 10 years ago, and I understand why I made certain choices and why I lived a certain lifestyle or did or said certain things. There comes a lot of power when you accept yourself fully, your spirit and your shadow. When you start healing your nervous system, when you start shifting and reprogramming your mind, you know what happens? Magic. Magic happens. So now we're getting to the fruits of the seeds. I remember I was doing a visualization again where I traveled to my path, where I traveled to my reality. When once there was smoke and cement, metal buildings, I saw a clear path. I saw grass, I saw bushes and trees, and I saw little flowers blooming. It was beautiful. I cannot even explain to you the feeling that I felt. Finally, progress. This is real, raw, authentic growth. I'm doing this for and only myself. Because as I mentioned previously, I was not going to settle. I was not going to settle for a miserable life just because my parents lived that way. My grandparents lived that way. Just because half of the country lives that way in chaos and toxicity doesn't mean I have to choose that. So when I saw that there was real progress in my subconscious to the things that I was doing and to the time and energy and money that I was investing in, it was one of the most beautiful things I've experienced. after all of this much suffering, seeing finally fruits of your own planted seeds. And at the end of the last year, I started talking with my partner that I have right now. At that time, I didn't even want a relationship because I've been through it, okay? I've been through it. It all felt so natural and so divine. And throughout this whole time, we have created such a secure and healthy relationship because of the work that I put in, because of the rapid work that I was putting into myself every single day. Then, in the bright beginning of this year, I was let go of my job. I remember when I got fired. It was a very toxic environment that I was working in. And I knew that universe is clearing things up for me because that's what it always does. It always does that. Always. When universe suddenly takes something out of your life, like my relationship, like my friendship with that girl, like my job, there's something better that will come. That is a massive fact, and you have to believe in that. You have to trust the universe. And of course, at first, I was just confused. I've been working really hard at this job, and I've been doing good at this job. But at the same time, there was deep knowing in my head that this was supposed to happen. And suddenly, I had the money, the time, the space, the freedom to go and travel. And I started experiencing these opportunities, these situations that one could ever dream of. I was put into situations that I could never imagine being. For example, I got into Milan Fashion Week where people can't really just go in. They looked at me and they were like, yeah, girl, go in. You know, these things started happening to me, these synchronicities. I didn't even need to be at that time when Milan Fashion Week was happening, but somehow, by the guidance of the universe, I was there. And even that trip really opened my eyes, opened my perspective that I'm limitless. And if I really put the work in, I will have results. And I'm divinely guided and I'm divinely protected. I started traveling here and there and everywhere. This year, springtime, in Italy again, but in a different city. And I was applying for different jobs. As I said, I really value freedom, but at that time I wasn't ready to go full in on myself. And I was like, okay, I will search for jobs. And well, I became the head of marketing. Prime example, when you have a loud no, closed door, huge bang, no, we don't want you, there's the door. Go out of that door and trust the universe. How I bagged this job, I still don't know, but I have it and I'm freaking great at it. Okay. And again, my energy is shifting. I'm up leveling again and again and again with these travels, with this new job, with this new partner. The apartment that I was living in suddenly, out of nowhere, again, again, out of nowhere, the owner of the house sends me a message that at the end of the month, I need to pack my bags and leave. With no explanation, no anything. Again, what happened? Energy did not match anymore. I was not matching that apartment's energy. Again, I had the belief that everything will turn out great. At that time, I just started my work, so I didn't know how I'm even going to pay for a new apartment, how I'm even going to move out. I don't have the resources. But what I did have is a mindset that I was constantly shifting to abundance mindset. These situations also showed me how much there is lack mindset within me and within all of us, how much there is scarcity mindset within me and within all of us. So I started more and more reprogramming my mind to abundance. And at once, I've had issues with money. I have had also times where I was very, very broke, where I didn't have anything. That was when I was like 19 or something. and I was truly living on survival mode. But that's a story time for another time. After a couple weeks, I found this apartment that is the most beautiful apartment, the most nicest, brightest, warmest. If a 12-year-old me would see this apartment and be like, you live here? But I wouldn't live here if I would have stayed at that apartment. And it was very, very cold. That apartment was very, very dark and very cold. I was living in the first floor, and in front of my windows there were trees, so it was incredibly dark, and it was very depressing. And I wanted to stay there for a year or more years, but I was kicked out because I wasn't supposed to live in the dark. I wasn't supposed to live somewhere where I didn't feel good. But when I was looking for apartments, I had a choice. Either I go with my scarcity mindset and I go with the apartment that I know I can afford, or I go with the apartment that is my dream apartment in this moment of my life. Again, what a blessing. What a blessing in disguise. Good thing, bad thing. Who knows? In a year time, okay, because this was crucial. All of these things that I've told you about, a bit of my childhood and a bit of like bullying and all of these things. Yes, there were hard times. There were a lot of hard times when I was growing up. Year 2024 was absolute hell. And in a year time, my last relationship broke up. My friendship broke up. I switched jobs. I switched apartments. And that's just outward things. The things that were happening within me were a lot bigger. And it was constantly reflecting on my environment. People that were no longer fitting with me were leaving. A friend that I had recently also left my life with a big kind of a fuck you. But I let them. I let them. Because again and again and again, universe has proved to me that something better will come, that will only match my energy even more, that I will be more and more aligned with. I know that when universe closes doors for me, that's an opportunity to find another door that's more aligned with my highest path and with my highest self. And those people, those situations, those places weren't aligned. They were matching my energy at some point in my life. All these people, all these toxic people, they were matching my energy because that's what I was at the time. When I shifted my mind, when I reprogrammed my mind, when I healed myself, healed my inner child, and became more and more and more who I am at my core, suddenly all of these things, left and right, left. Where we are now, we are here. I'm talking with you in this podcast, and I've been waiting to do a podcast for years. I've been manifesting this for years, honestly. But you just heard, I could not do it 2 years ago. I could not do it a year ago. And even though I had some knowledge, I had some wisdom, and now all of the things have aligned in such a beautiful way that I finally feel ready. I also feel like one of my purposes in this life is to share these things with you so we can all guide each other back home. And I've always been guided to do stuff like this. I've always been guided to do social media where I share with things, where I share my knowledge, where I share my wisdom, where I share my experiences. This is natural to me. I am so proud of myself that I'm here. And this is real. I want you to take you on this journey with me. I want you to shift your mind. I don't want you to live a miserable life, okay? I want us all to live a happy, fulfilled, healed life where we are at peace with ourselves, where love is within us and constantly around us, where opportunities that level us up come for you easily. And by you being here and listening to this podcast, and even listening to the end of this podcast, is you already, in a way, committing to your own self growth, to your own self love. Great things are coming for you, and you have a lot of potential that is gonna come true. You need to activate it. And that comes with certain mindset shifts. And I feel like I'm finally doing my due diligence why I came on this earth. I post a lot also on my Instagram. On my Instagram stories, you can see what I'm doing in my daily life, or when I'm sharing knowledge, or different kind of wisdom, or different kind of experiences that I've gone through. And I also have a TikTok account. I mostly post on there in Latvian because, well, there's also a reason why I was born in Latvia. And I also want to just talk with my fellow Latvians, you know. But you can still follow me there if you want. Maybe you will learn some Latvian. Or maybe you are Latvian, and I encourage you to follow me there. I'm so grateful that you are here. I'm so grateful that I am here and that I am nowhere else but here in this moment. And I'm sure that we will have an amazing journey together. And this is only the beginning. The sky is not the limit here. We are limitless. Okay. And to end my episodes, I will tell you 3 things that you can do. 3 very simple things help your mindset shift based on the topic of the episode. Look around your relationships that you have right now with people. Are they aligning with you, who you want to be? Are these friends, are these environments that you are in, are they aligning with who you want to be? Just ask that question, and whatever the answer is, will be. Second, can you sit with yourself? Ask yourself, can I sit with myself for a moment? Can I truly feel my emotions without judging them, without shaming myself? And if not, how can I accept more and more of my difficult emotions and thoughts? And the third, one of the most important, your identity that you refuse to grow won't fit in the life you're trying to build. So, what identities are holding you back? If you will ask these 3 questions to yourself, you're already one step forward to live a better life for yourself. I love you so much. If you listened to this whole audio, you're a hero, and I love you, and I'm grateful that you are on this earth, okay? With every single fiber in me, I'm grateful that you're here. And I'll see you next time. I love you. Bye. I've been waiting for this day a long time coming. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited to start this journey and to go on this journey with you.